It's Kurt Jackson, your certified mortgage planner here in Liberty, Missouri, and today's video topic is asking the question or trying to help answer the question, should you want to pay off your mortgage early? Let's start with a history lesson. Back in the late 20s and early 30s, there was a conception that mortgages were a necessary evil that should be paid off as soon as possible. And there was good reason for this line of thinking, because in those days most mortgages had clauses in them that gave the bank the option of calling the note due and payable in full at any time and for any reason, even if you had made all your payments on time. Now, here's what history told us. On October 29th, 1929, the stock market crashed. Many investors had purchased stocks on margins, which was borrowed money. And back then, the margin requirement was just 10%. That meant you could buy $1,000 worth of stock for just $100 of your own cash. However, when the market crashed, reducing the typical portfolio by 30% in one day, that portfolio that was worth $1,000 was now only worth $700. So the people that had borrowed $900 in the first place were finding that they were getting margin calls instituted by their stockbrokers, which meant that they were required to bring in enough money to get their equity back to a 10% position. So in this scenario, investors would have been required to bring in about $270. $200 for the deficiency between what their account was worth and what they had borrowed, and another $70 to satisfy the 10% equity requirement of the portfolio value. The investors who had money went to their bank to withdraw it, to give to their brokers. They had 24 hours to satisfy these margin calls. The problem began when so many investors were required to withdraw significant sums of money in order to satisfy their mortgage margin calls, and was exacerbated by the general depository public who were fearing that the banks would soon run out of money, ran to the bank to cash in on their deposits. So the banks didn't have enough cash, and the only source they really had for cash was to start calling mortgages due to get enough cash to satisfy that demand. Well, but in the meantime, the brokers whose margin calls were not being satisfied were forced to sell the stocks to recoup what they could, and all of this selling action drove the stock prices down even further, thereby exacerbating the margin calls, and as you can see, this became a vicious cycle which led to the Great Depression. In 1933, Congress started doing something about that, and they created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, and that was set up to safeguard consumers against bank failure. See, before 1933, consumers were unprotected if their bank went under due to bad lending practices, and over half the banks failed during the Great Depression. Now, in addition to instituting such changes to prevent future depressions, there's also historical proof of how our great nation has learned from that crash of 1929. Back on October 19, 1987, the first 1929-like crash since then, Alan Greenspan, the Fed chairman, announced that the Federal Reserve would supply as much cash to the nation's bank as they needed. Now, Greenspan's comments calmed so much of the panic on October 19th that his actions, really more so than any other single action, are created with averting another Great Depression. And that's similar to what the Fed is doing now at the time of our recording of this in March of 2008. Now, there's some other issues to ponder when weighing the option of paying off your mortgage or investing the money that you would otherwise use to pay off your mortgage, and here's some of them. The first one, when you own your house, you're going to have the advantage of appreciation whether you have a mortgage or own it free and clear. Owning your home outright does not increase your appreciation. Conversely, you cannot achieve appreciation in an investment unless you have money in them, which begs the question, why not put money into an investment instead of the house? Second, consumers have only two types of interest that are tax deductible: mortgage interest and margin interest. The historical average for a 30-year fixed rate is about 8.25%. The average homeowner's marginal tax bracket is about 28%. So in this case, the tax effective rate when considering the tax deductibility of mortgage interest makes your actual cost of your mortgage only 5.94%. And if your interest rate is lower or your tax bracket is higher, your effective interest rate is even lower than that 5.94. For instance, the effective rate for someone in a 31% tax bracket with a 6% mortgage is only 4.14%. Now, since 1926, the stock market has had an average return of 12%. Now, that's almost twice the return that you get by paying off your mortgage. Now, of course, there's a difference, and it's even greater if your interest rate's lower than the above example of the 8.25% and a 28% tax bracket. All right, so highly rated mutual funds typically return about 15% or more per year over the long term. So the question we ask here is, why would you put any extra money to pay your mortgage off if it was saving you 5.94% or 4.14% when you could be investing that money and earning 6 to 12% to 15% or more? The third thing is to consider is timing. The rule of 72 says that if you divide the return on your investment into 72, you'll get the number of years it will take your investment to double. Now we'll start with an investment of, let's say, $5,000 and a return of 12%. 72 divided by 12, which the 12% is the anticipated return on our investment, is 6. So that means approximately every 6 years the investment will double. So a person who puts $5,000 in a 12% investment at the age of 25 will have $10,000 at 31, $20,000 at 37, $40,000 at 43, $80,000 at 49, $160,000 at 55, $320,000 at 61, and $640,000 at 67. Now, if this same person had put that same deposit in the same investment at the age of 19 instead of 25, their ending account balance at 67 would have been $1.28 million, a difference of $640,000. So what this is really, it's just a simple scenario, and it should highlight 3 very important facts regarding investing. Invest as much money as you can, put it in as early as possible, put your money in the most aggressive investments as your comfort level will allow if your time frame is long term. Remember that stocks and stock mutual funds will fluctuate up and down, but over a long period of time, let's say about a minimum of maybe 5 years or so, the trend is usually up. Now folks, I know these things seem like common sense, but if they're so simple and obvious, why do so many people put their extra money toward paying down or paying off their house, where they get a 4.14 or 5.94% savings? See folks, it's not even a return. Right? Instead of putting it into a conservative investment earning 6.5 to 8%, or a good mutual fund earning 12 to 15% or better. Why do people procrastinate investing until their later years? Remember back to our example, if you miss just one doubling period in that scenario by investing at 25 instead of 19, you miss out on $640,000. So if you procrastinate the day of your investing so that you should miss 2 or more doubling periods, you miss out on that much more. Yet so many people want to pay off their house and then put money into investments. And considering that if you begin investing early and you continue investing on a regular basis because you have a mortgage that allows you the cash flow to do so, you could easily have enough money at the end of 30 years to not only pay off your house, but to also have a significant portion remaining in your investment account, which is hard to do if you try to pay off your house first. The fourth and final glaring issue that I want to consider is liquidity. This is something that not many people really think about. Now, what's the difference between having a $200,000 house that's paid for, or having, let's say, $400,000 investments with a balance on your mortgage of $150,000 to $200,000? Folks, the difference is what we call liquidity. If your mortgage is paid and you've allocated the better part of your resources to paying off your mortgage, let's say along the way, what if you lost your job and needed money? It's next to impossible to take money out of your house at that time. What if you became disabled, got a divorce, had a death of one of the spouses? It's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get the money out of that house. Conversely, if you've got a big fat investment account and you lose your job, become disabled, get divorced, have a death, you've got plenty of money to make the mortgage payment and pay your other obligations. And as long as you stay employed and can meet your obligations through your income, that investment account can keep growing, thereby enabling you to amass real wealth. So when you retire, assuming you aspire to retire, it's going to matter how much money you have, not how much equity you have in your house, unless you plan on eating your house in retirement. Now folks, it's kind of a simple, try to be somewhat of a simple explanation, and we have a system that analyzes your financial health with regard to your current situation and where you aspire to be. With the right information, we can make some mortgage recommendations to help you achieve your financial goals. We also work with many different financial planners. We do not make money on referrals or investments, but we do work with financial planners who can assist you in developing a financial plan based on your time frame, your risk tolerance, your current portfolio value, and your financial goals. So if you have any questions or would like to talk to us more about this, our contact information is on the screen. We appreciate you watching this, and please share it with anybody you feel might benefit from it. Thanks.